The microphone feels heavy in my hand as I watch my brother Sullivan deliver his best man speech. My fingers trace the smooth metal, and I can already taste the chaos I'm about to unleash. In less than 20 minutes, I'll shatter this perfect wedding reception into 1,000 glittering pieces. My name is Piper, and I'm about to ruin my brother's wedding. To the happy couple, Sullivan raises his champagne glass, and 200 guests follow suit. The crystal chandeliers catch the light, creating dancing patterns across the ballroom's cream-colored walls. My mother Yara dabs at her eyes with an embroidered handkerchief, the perfect picture of maternal pride. "You okay?" Olive whispers, squeezing my arm under the table. "You look like you're about to throw up." "I'm fine," I lie, gripping the microphone tighter. The truth is, my stomach is doing backflips. 3 months ago, I wouldn't have dreamed of doing this. 3 months ago, I still believed I was really part of this family. "Ladies and gentlemen," the wedding coordinator announces, "we'll now hear from the bride's sister." My mother's head snaps toward me, her perfectly styled hair barely moving. "Piper, darling, I didn't know you prepared a speech." "Oh, I've been preparing this for weeks," I say, standing up. My black bridesmaid dress suddenly feels too tight, too restrictive. Like everything else in this family, it's just for show. As I walk to the center of the dance floor, I catch sight of my father Francis, busy typing on his phone. Typical. He's probably closing another real estate deal, too important to pay attention to his daughter. Well, not really his daughter. "Hey everyone," I start, my voice shakier than I'd like. "For those who don't know me, I'm Piper, Sullivan's sister." The word sister tastes bitter on my tongue. From the corner of my eye, I spot Terrell, Sullivan's college friend, watching me intently. We've only talked a few times during wedding preparations, but something in his eyes tells me he sees right through me. Growing up in the Warner family was interesting. I pause, letting the word hang in the air. We always looked perfect on the outside. The successful father, the devoted mother, the achieving son, and the artistic daughter. Picture-perfect Christmas cards every year. My Aunt Presley shifts uncomfortably in her seat. She knows what's coming. She's the only one who ever hinted that things weren't what they seemed. "Piper," my mother's warning tone carries across the room. "Perhaps we should move on to the dancing." "No, Mom, I don't think we will." My voice grows stronger. "Because 3 months ago I found something interesting while looking for my birth certificate for my passport renewal." The room goes quiet, even the clinking of glasses stops. "I found adoption papers." My hands are shaking, but my voice isn't. Papers that showed that the perfect daughter in those perfect Christmas cards wasn't actually theirs. Sullivan stands up so fast his chair falls backward. "Piper, what are you doing?" "I'm telling the truth, Sully, something our parents never did." I turn to face them directly. 28 years of lies. 28 years of pretending. Did you think I'd never find out? My father finally looks up from his phone. His face has gone pale. My mother's mascara is running now, but not from happy tears anymore. "I thought maybe there was a good reason," I continue, my voice cracking. "So I asked them, multiple times, but they just kept dismissing me, changing the subject, telling me I was being dramatic." Olive stands up, ready to come to my side, but I shake my head slightly. I need to do this alone. So I decided that if they wouldn't give me the truth, I'd take it for myself. And what better place than here, where everyone can see the perfect family for what it really is. "That's enough," my father's voice booms across the room. But for the first time in my life, I'm not backing down. "No, it's not enough. It's never been enough." I turn to address the shocked guests. "The truth is, I'm adopted. And my parents were so obsessed with maintaining their perfect image that they never told me. They let me believe a lie my entire life." The microphone slips from my trembling fingers, hitting the floor with a loud feedback screech. The sound perfectly matches the chaos erupting around me. Sullivan is yelling, my mother is crying, and my father is storming toward me. But as I stand there in the middle of it all, I feel strangely light, free. The truth is finally out, and there's no taking it back. As guests start whispering and phones come out to capture the drama, I catch Tyrell's eye again. He's not looking at me with shock or judgment, but with something else. Understanding? Admiration? I can't quite tell. What I do know is that this is just the beginning. The perfect family facade has cracked, and through those cracks, I can finally see a way out. 3 months earlier, I sat cross-legged on my bedroom floor, surrounded by scattered papers from the old filing cabinet in Dad's study. My hands trembled as I held the document that would change everything. "Olive, I need you to come over, right now." My voice cracked as I spoke into the phone. "I'm in the middle of a date, Pipe," she said. "Please, I found something. I can't." The tears started falling onto the papers. 20 minutes later, Olive burst through my apartment door, still wearing her date night dress. "What's wrong? What happened?" I thrust the papers at her, unable to speak. She sat beside me on the floor, her eyes scanning the documents. "Holy shit," she whispered. "Are these adoption papers from when I was 6 months old?" I wiped my eyes with my sleeve. "They never told me, Olive. Not once in 28 years. Olive wrapped her arms around me. Maybe they were waiting for the right time? The right time? I pulled away. I'm 28. I've graduated college, started a career, dated seriously. When exactly was the right time? Have you talked to them about it? I shook my head. I found these 2 hours ago. I was just looking for my birth certificate for that stupid passport renewal. You need to confront them, Olive said, sorting through the papers. Look, there's more here. Medical records, court documents. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. Family dinner tomorrow night. Sullivan and Jessica are announcing their engagement. Wear something nice. I laughed bitterly. Perfect timing. Another family celebration. Are you going to say something at dinner? I don't know. I stood up and paced the room. How do you even start that conversation? Pass the potatoes, and by the way, why did you lie about adopting me? The next evening, I sat at my parents' dining room table, pushing food around my plate while Sullivan and Jessica shared their engagement story. Mom was beaming. Dad was actually paying attention for once, and I felt like I was watching a play where everyone knew their lines except me. Piper, you're quiet tonight, Mom said, reaching for the wine bottle. Everything okay at work? I set down my fork. Actually, I wanted to ask you something. Of course, darling. Why did you never tell me I was adopted? The clatter of Sullivan's fork hitting his plate echoed through the sudden silence. Mom's hand froze mid-pour, red wine dripping onto the white tablecloth. What are you talking about? Dad's voice was sharp. I found the papers yesterday in your study. I pulled out the folded documents from my purse. Were you ever going to tell me? Mom's face went pale. Piper, this isn't the time. When is the time? I slammed my hand on the table. When I'm 30, 40, when I have kids of my own? You're being dramatic, Dad said, standing up. Jessica, Sullivan, I apologize for this disruption. Dramatic? I stood too, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor. You've lied to me my entire life. We protected you, Mom said, her voice trembling. We gave you everything. Except the truth. Sullivan cleared his throat. Maybe we should stay out of this, I snapped. Did you know? His silence was answer enough. Great. So everyone knew except me. I grabbed my purse. Thanks for dinner. Piper, wait, Mom called after me. Let's discuss this rationally. I turned at the door. Rationally? Like how you rationally decided to hide this from me for almost 3 decades? As I drove home, my phone kept buzzing with messages. I ignored them all except Olive's. How did it go? Exactly as expected. Denial, deflection, and you're being dramatic. Come over, I have wine and ice cream. At Olive's apartment, curled up on her couch, I finally let myself break down completely. There's something else, I said, wiping my eyes. I overheard Mom on the phone as I was leaving. She was talking to Aunt Presley, saying something about she can't know everything, and some secrets need to stay buried. Olive sat up straighter. What do you think that means? I don't know. I took another spoonful of ice cream. But I'm going to find out. And you know what? Sullivan's wedding would be the perfect time to make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of family we really are. Piper, Olive's voice held a warning note. Don't try to talk me out of it. They've had 28 years to tell me the truth. Now they can have their truth served cold, just like this ice cream. As I said the words, I felt something harden inside me. The hurt was still there, but now it had an edge to it. A purpose. My phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. "Hey, it's Tyrell. Sullivan gave me your number. Want to grab coffee? Sounds like you could use someone to talk to." I stared at the message, wondering if maybe the universe was finally throwing me a lifeline. The bridal shower was exactly as insufferable as I'd expected. Mom had rented out the garden room at the country club, and everything was draped in blush pink and cream. I sat in the corner, nursing my third mimosa, watching Mom play perfect hostess. "Piper, darling," she called across the room. "Come help Jessica open her gifts." "I'm good here, thanks." I raised my glass in a mock toast. Aunt Presley slid into the chair next to me. "You look about as thrilled to be here as I am. At least you're not wearing this ridiculous bridesmaid dress." I tugged at the itchy fabric. "Did you know?" "About what?" But her eyes didn't quite meet mine. "About me. About the adoption." Presley's fingers tightened around her wine glass. "Piper, there are things—" "Ladies!" Mom's voice cut through our conversation. "We're about to play bridal bingo." I stood up abruptly. "I need some air." In the hallway, I pulled out my phone and texted Tyrell. "Save me, I'm dying of pink overload." His response came quickly. "Meeting wrapped early. Want to escape?" 20 minutes later, I was sliding into the passenger seat of his car, ignoring the flood of texts from Mom. "You're my hero," I said, kicking off my heels. "Rough day?" Tyrell pulled out of the parking lot. "Just the usual family fun, Mom pretending everything's fine, Jessica being the perfect bride-to-be, and me drinking mimosas to cope." He glanced at me. "Have you talked to Sullivan since I confronted them about the adoption?" "He's called twice, left messages about working things out as a family." I mimicked my brother's condescending tone. But he knew Tyrell. He knew all along. We ended up at a small coffee shop downtown, far from the country club's manufactured perfection. "So what's your plan?" Tyrell asked, stirring his coffee. "Besides drinking all the mimosas at the wedding." "I'm going to tell everyone the truth, during the reception." He set down his spoon. "Are you sure that's what you want?" "What else can I do? They won't talk to me about it. Mom changes the subject, Dad buries himself in work, and Sullivan—" I trailed off, remembering our last conversation. Maybe there's more to the story? That's what Aunt Presley started to say before Mom interrupted. I leaned forward. "Actually, I've been meaning to ask you something. You've known Sullivan since college. Did he ever mention—" Tyrell shook his head. "Never. But Piper, if you go through with this at the wedding, there's no going back." "I know. But I'm tired of pretending. I'm tired of being the only one who doesn't know my own story." My phone buzzed again. "Mom, where are you? Jessica is about to open your gift." "I should go back," I sighed. "Can't have people talking about the absent bridesmaid?" "Let them talk," Tyrell said, but he was already reaching for his keys. Back at the country club, I slipped into the garden room just as Jessica was opening my gift, a crystal vase I'd barely bothered to wrap. "Oh, it's lovely," Jessica exclaimed with practiced enthusiasm. "Piper, where were you?" Mom hissed as I passed her. "Getting coffee with Tyrell." Her eyes narrowed. "Sullivan's friend? I don't think that's appropriate, given the circumstances." "The circumstances being that I found out my whole life is a lie?" "Lower your voice," she snapped. "This is Jessica's day." "It's always someone else's day, isn't it, Mom? When does it get to be my day? When do I get the truth?" Before she could answer, Aunt Presley appeared between us. "Yara, they need you in the kitchen. Something about the cake." Mom hurried off, but Presley caught my arm before I could escape. "Meet me tomorrow," she whispered. "The diner on Oak Street, 9 a.m. There are things you should know." "What things?" But she was already walking away, leaving me with more questions than answers. My phone buzzed one last time. Tyrell. "For what it's worth, I think you're braver than any of them." I looked around the room at my family, Mom directing the catering staff, Jessica surrounded by expensive gifts, the other bridesmaids giggling over wedding details. Everything perfectly orchestrated, perfectly false. 2 months until the wedding. 2 months to uncover whatever secrets Aunt Presley was hiding. 2 months to prepare for the moment I'd tear down this carefully constructed facade. I caught my reflection in one of the room's many mirrors. For the first time in weeks, I didn't see confusion or hurt in my eyes. I saw determination. Tomorrow at the diner, I'd start getting answers. And this time, no one would interrupt. I arrived at the diner 20 minutes early, but Aunt Presley was already there, stirring sugar into her coffee with shaking hands. The morning light caught the silver in her hair, making her look older than I'd ever noticed before. "You came," she said as I slid into the booth. "You said there were things I should know." The waitress appeared with a coffee pot. I nodded, and she filled my cup. "Before I tell you anything," Presley said, "you need to understand that your parents thought they were protecting you." "From what?" She reached into her purse and pulled out a yellowed envelope. "From this." I opened it carefully. Inside was a handwritten letter, dated 28 years ago. "Dear Yara and Francis," I read aloud. "I know this is an impossible situation, but please take care of my baby girl. She deserves better than what I can give her. All I ask is that you never tell her about me. She can't know about the darkness she came from. Love, Marie." My hands started shaking. "Marie, my birth mother?" Presley nodded. "Your parents weren't just random adoptive parents, Piper. Marie she was my best friend." The bell above the diner door chimed. I looked up to see Terrell walking in, and my heart skipped. He spotted us and started to turn away, but I waved him over. "Is this a bad time?" he asked. "No," I said quickly. "Stay. Please." Presley waited until Terrell was seated beside me before continuing. "Marie was brilliant, but troubled. She struggled with addiction, with abusive relationships. When she found out she was pregnant with you, she knew she couldn't keep you safe. So she gave me to her best friend's brother?" I looked at Presley. "Dad is your brother." "Yes. Marie knew you'd be safe with them. They had money, stability, everything she couldn't provide. But why keep it a secret? Why not tell me when I was old enough to understand?" Presley's eyes filled with tears. "Because Marie made them promise, and because she's still alive, Piper. She's in a long-term care facility. She overdosed when you were 2 years old. The damage, she never fully recovered." The diner suddenly felt too small, too hot. Tyrell's hand found mine under the table. "Where?" My voice cracked. "Where is she?" "Sunset Grove Care Center, about an hour from here." Presley pulled out another piece of paper. "This is her room number, but Piper, she's not really there anymore, not mentally." I stood up so fast my coffee cup rattled. "I need some air." Outside, I leaned against the brick wall, breathing hard. Terrell followed me out. "You okay?" "My birth mother is alive. She's been alive this whole time, less than an hour away." I turned to face him. Why didn't they tell me? Even if she made them promise, I had a right to know. "Maybe they thought they were sparing you pain." "By lying? By letting me believe I was their biological daughter?" I pushed off from the wall. "I'm going to see her." "Now?" "Right now. Are you coming?" He didn't hesitate. "Of course." Back inside, Presley was still sitting in the booth, clutching her coffee cup. "I'm going to see her," I announced. "Piper, wait. No more waiting. No more secrets." I grabbed the paper with the room number. "You can either tell Mom and Dad or I will, but I'm done being kept in the dark." In Terrell's car, I finally let myself cry. He drove in silence, one hand on the wheel, the other holding mine. My phone started ringing. Mom's face flashed on the screen. "Presley told them," I said, declining the call. "What are you going to do when you get there?" "I don't know, but I need to see her. I need to see where I came from." The phone rang again. This time it was Sullivan. "Little sister, what the hell are you doing?" "Don't call me that," I snapped. "You lost that right when I found out you've been lying to me my entire life." "Mom and Dad are freaking out. They're worried you'll do something stupid." "Like what? Tell the truth?" "Because that's exactly what I'm planning to do at your wedding." "Piper, please." I hung up and turned off my phone. They're all so worried about their perfect image, I said to Tyrell. Nobody's worried about what this is doing to me. I am, he said quietly. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw nothing but sincerity in his eyes. The care center's sign appeared ahead of us. My heart started racing. Ready? Tyrell asked. No, I admitted, but I'm going in anyway. 28 years of lies were about to end. Whatever I found inside that building, at least it would be the truth. Sunset Grove Care Center smelled like disinfectant and sadness. A nurse led us down a pale green hallway, her shoes squeaking against the linoleum floor. Room 214, she said, stopping at a door decorated with faded paper flowers. Just don't expect too much interaction. Marie hasn't spoken in years. My hand trembled on the doorknob. Tyrell squeezed my shoulder. Want me to wait out here? I shook my head. Stay, please. The room was small but bright, with sunlight streaming through a large window. And there, in a wheelchair by the window, sat my birth mother. Her gray-streaked hair hung loose around her shoulders, and her vacant eyes stared at something only she could see. Marie? My voice came out as a whisper. I'm Piper. No response, not even a flicker of recognition. Your daughter. The nurse touched my arm gently. She's been like this since the overdose. The doctors say her brain was deprived of oxygen for too long. I moved closer, studying her face for any trace of myself. We had the same nose, I realized, the same high cheekbones. Can I reached for her hand. Of course, the nurse said. I'll give you some time. Marie's hand was warm but limp in mine. I sank into the chair beside her wheelchair while Tyrell leaned against the wall, a silent guardian. I found out about you, I said. About the adoption. They never told me, but I found the papers. Tears started falling. I wish you could tell me why. Why you made them promise to keep it secret. The door burst open. Mom stood there, breathless, with Dad right behind her. Piper, stop this right now, Dad commanded. I didn't let go of Marie's hand. Stop what? Finally meeting my real mother? We are your real parents, Mom said, stepping into the room. We raised you. We loved you. You lied to me. My voice rose, and Marie's hand twitched in mine. My entire life has been a lie, and I had to find out by accident. Keep your voice down, Dad hissed. This is a care facility. Oh, right. We wouldn't want to make a scene. That's what this is all about, isn't it? Keeping up appearances? Tyrell pushed off from the wall. Maybe we should take this outside. No, I said firmly. I'm staying with my mother. Piper, Mom's voice cracked. Please try to understand. We wanted to protect you. From what? From knowing that my birth mother loved me enough to give me up? From knowing that she's been here all this time, alive? From this, Dad gestured at Marie. From seeing her like this. From knowing that addiction destroyed her. That wasn't your choice to make. Marie's hand suddenly gripped mine, hard. Her eyes were still unfocused, but her fingers held on like she was drowning. She's responding to you, the nurse said from the doorway. That's unusual. Mom stepped forward, reaching for me, but I pulled away. Don't. I turned back to Marie. I'm getting married in 2 weeks, I told her. Well, not me, my brother, the son they actually gave birth to. I'm supposed to stand there and pretend we're one big happy family. Piper, enough, Dad warned. No, it's not enough. It will never be enough until everyone knows the truth. I stood up, carefully releasing Marie's hand. And they will know. At the wedding, everyone will know exactly what kind of family we really are. You wouldn't dare, Mom whispered. Watch me. I turned to leave, but Tyrell caught my arm. Piper, look. Marie was moving her lips, no sound coming out, but her eyes were fixed on me for the first time. What is she saying? I asked the nurse. She moved closer, watching Marie's lips. I think she's saying sorry. The word hit me like a physical blow. All these years, all these lies, and the only person who apologized was the one who couldn't even speak. I'll be back, I promised Marie, with or without their permission. In the hallway, Mom tried one last time. Please don't do this to Sullivan, to us. Do what? Tell the truth? Someone has to. I walked away, Tyrell beside me, leaving my parents standing in that sterile hallway with their perfect family facade crumbling around them. In the car, I finally turned my phone back on. Dozens of messages from Sullivan, from Jessica, from family friends. The latest was from Olive. Your mom just called me crying. What happened? The truth happened, I texted back, and in 2 weeks everyone else will know it too. Tyrell started the car. Where to? I looked back at the care center, at the window I knew was Marie's. Somewhere I can practice my wedding speech. The time for secrets was over. The truth was all I had left, and I was going to wield it like a weapon. The wedding reception was in full swing when I finally stood up, champagne glass in one hand, microphone in the other. The events of my revelation from earlier still hung heavy in the air, but I wasn't done, not by a long shot. I'd like to make another toast, I announced. The room fell silent, all eyes turning to me. Mom half rose from her seat, but Dad pulled her back down. Piper, please, Sullivan begged from the head table. Haven't you done enough? Actually, no. I moved to the center of the dance floor. You see, after I discovered I was adopted, I did some digging, and what I found was so much worse than just a hidden adoption. Olive stood up. Piper, maybe we should... My birth mother is alive, I continued, my voice growing stronger. She's in a care facility less than an hour from here. She's been there for 26 years, ever since an overdose left her brain damaged. And everyone knew. Everyone except me. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Phones came out recording the drama unfolding. But here's the best part. I turned to face my parents directly. She was Aunt Presley's best friend. This wasn't some random adoption. You knew her. You knew exactly who she was, and you kept her existence from me my entire life. That's enough. Dad's voice boomed across the room. No, it's not, because guess what I found yesterday when I went to see her? I pulled a folded paper from my dress. The nurses gave me access to her personal effects, and I found this. Mom's face went white. Piper, don't... It's a letter, written right before her overdose. My hands shook as I unfolded it. Dear Yara and Francis, I know you think keeping Piper from me is the right thing to do, but she's my daughter. She deserves to know her mother, even with all my flaws. Please don't cut me out of her life completely. The room was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Even the wedding photographers had stopped clicking their cameras. She wrote this 2 days before she overdosed, I said, my voice cracking. 2 days before the incident that left her unable to speak, to think clearly, to tell me herself who she was. And you knew. You all knew. Jessica was crying now, clutching Sullivan's arm. He just stared at me, shock written across his face. So here's to family secrets, I raised my glass. Here's to lies told in the name of protection. Here's to the perfect family image that meant more than the truth. I tried to stop her. Aunt Presley's voice cut through the tension. She stood up, tears streaming down her face. Marie was my best friend, and I tried to convince them to tell you, but they were so afraid. Afraid of what? I demanded. Afraid I'd find out my birth mother was an addict? Afraid it would ruin your country club reputation? We were afraid you'd end up like her, Mom shouted, finally breaking. We were afraid you'd go looking for her, try to help her, and get pulled into that world. That wasn't your choice to make. Tyrell appeared at my side, gently taking the microphone. Maybe we should take a break. No. I pulled away from him. Everyone needs to hear this. Everyone needs to know that the perfect Warner family is built on lies, that they let a woman waste away in a care facility, alone, while keeping her daughter in the dark. You want the truth? Dad stood up, his face red with anger. The truth is we gave you everything. A good home, education, opportunities. Everything Marie couldn't provide. Except honesty. I threw my champagne glass. It shattered against the wall, sending guests scrambling. Except the basic dignity of knowing who I really am. Piper, Tyrell's voice was soft but firm, you've made your point. I looked around the room. Some guests were filming on their phones, others were whispering behind their hands. Sullivan had his head in his hands while Jessica sobbed quietly beside him. "You're right," I said, suddenly feeling drained. "I have made my point, and now everyone knows exactly what kind of family we are." I turned to leave, but Mom's voice stopped me. "If you walk out that door, don't bother coming back." I turned back one last time. "Don't worry, Mom. I wouldn't want to tarnish your perfect family image any more than I already have." Terrell followed me out into the night air. Behind us, I could hear the chaos erupting in the reception hall. "Feel better?" he asked. "No," I admitted. "But at least now everyone knows the truth." My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "I was at the wedding. I knew Marie. There's more to the story than what you know. Meet me tomorrow?" I showed Tyrell the message. "Are you going to go?" I looked back at the reception hall, at the family I thought I knew, at the lies finally exposed to the light. "Yes," I said. "I need to know everything." The morning after the wedding, I sat in a quiet corner of a local cafe, waiting for the mysterious texter. Tyrell insisted on coming with me, sitting at a nearby table pretending to work on his laptop. A woman in her 50s approached my table. "Piper?" "Yes?" "I'm Rachel. I was Marie's nurse, before the overdose." My heart skipped. "Please, sit." Rachel settled across from me, placing an old photo album on the table. "I saw your speech last night. I was catering the wedding. You knew my birth mother?" "I was there the night she overdosed." Rachel's fingers traced the album's worn cover. "But there's something you need to know. It wasn't an accident." The cafe suddenly felt too quiet, too still. "What do you mean?" "Marie was doing better. She'd been clean for months. She was fighting for you, trying to prove she could be in your life." Rachel opened the album. "Look." The first photo showed a younger version of the woman I'd seen in the care facility. Marie was smiling, holding a baby, holding me. "Your parents had temporary custody while Marie went through rehab. She was making progress following all the court requirements." Rachel turned the page. "Then one night, she called me in a panic, said she'd found something, that your parents were planning to take you away permanently." Terrell had abandoned his pretense of working and moved closer. The next day, they found her unconscious in her apartment. Everyone assumed she'd relapsed, but Rachel pulled out an envelope. "She left this with me the night before, made me promise to keep it safe." My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a letter and what looked like legal documents. "Dear Rachel," I read aloud. "If anything happens to me, keep these safe. Francis and Yara are trying to declare me an unfit mother. They've falsified documents about my recovery. They're going to take my baby forever. I have proof, but they know I know. I'm scared. If something happens to me, make sure Piper learns the truth someday." "That's impossible," I whispered. "They wouldn't." The next morning she was found with enough heroin in her system to kill 3 people. Marie never used heroin. She was afraid of needles. Tyrell's hand found mine under the table. "Are you saying—" I couldn't finish the sentence. "I'm saying your parents wanted you badly enough to do whatever it took." Rachel's voice was gentle. "The police investigated briefly, but Francis had connections. The case was closed as an accidental overdose. Does Aunt Presley know?" "She suspected, I think, but she could never prove anything." My phone buzzed. Sullivan. "Mom's in the hospital. Anxiety attack after your stunt last night. Hope you're happy." I ignored it, focusing on the documents Rachel had brought. Court papers, medical records, letters between my parents' lawyer and the adoption agency. "They orchestrated the whole thing," I said numbly. "They made sure she'd never be able to claim me." "Marie loved you, Piper. She fought for you until she couldn't fight anymore." Terrell spoke up. "Have you shown these documents to anyone else?" Rachel shook her head. "I was afraid. Francis is a powerful man. Not powerful enough to hide from this." I gathered the documents. "Not anymore." My phone buzzed again. "Aunt Presley. We need to talk. There's something you should know about the night Marie overdosed." "I have to go," I told Rachel. "But thank you for keeping these safe, for telling me the truth." Outside, Tyrell grabbed my arm. What are you going to do? First, I'm going to meet Presley. Then I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of people my parents really are. Piper, think about this. If what Rachel said is true, your parents might have been involved in my birth mother's attempted murder? Yeah, I got that. I pulled out my phone and dialed Olive's number. Hey, remember that investigative reporter you dated last year? Is he still interested in family scandal stories? Piper, slow down. What's happening? The truth, Olive. The whole truth is finally coming out. Another text from Sullivan. Mom's asking for you. Please come to the hospital. I showed Tyrell the message. Are you going to go? Yes, I said, hailing a cab. But not to make peace. I'm going to look them in the eyes and ask them if they really tried to kill my birth mother. Tyrell climbed in beside me. I'm coming with you. As the cab pulled away, I looked at the photo of Marie holding me as a baby. Her smile was bright, hopeful. She had no idea what was coming. I'm going to make this right, I whispered to the photo. I promise. My phone buzzed one last time. An unknown number. Be careful who you trust. Some secrets are buried deep for a reason. The hospital loomed ahead, and with it, the final confrontation I never expected. It was time to learn just how far my parents had gone to create their perfect family. The hospital room was quiet, except for the steady beep of monitors. Mom lay in bed, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. Dad sat beside her, and Aunt Presley stood by the window. Before anyone says anything, I announced, holding up the documents, I know what really happened to Marie. Dad's face went pale. Whatever you think you know. I know you falsified documents. I know you made sure she'd never get custody, and I know about the heroin. Mom started crying. We did it for you. No, my voice was steel. You did it for yourselves. You wanted the perfect family, and Marie was in your way. You don't understand, Dad stood up. She was unstable, dangerous. She was getting better. I slammed the documents down. She was fighting for me, and you couldn't stand it. Tell her, Presley said suddenly. Tell her the truth, Francis, or I will. Dad sank back into his chair. We didn't mean for her to die. What did you do? My heart was pounding. We paid someone, Mom whispered, to plant the drugs, to make it look like a relapse. We just wanted her to fail the custody hearing. But something went wrong, Presley continued. The person we hired, he used too much. By the time they found her, we never meant, Dad's voice cracked. We just wanted you to be ours. The truth hit me like a physical blow. Tyrell steadied me as I swayed. You tried to kill my mother. No, Mom reached for me. We just wanted to discredit her. We didn't know. I've already called the police, I said quietly. They're on their way, and I've sent copies of everything to every major news outlet in the state. Dad lunged for his phone, but Tyrell blocked him. It's done, I continued. Your perfect family image is over, and Marie finally gets justice. You'll destroy this family, Mom sobbed. You destroyed it 28 years ago when you decided your reputation was worth more than a woman's life. The door opened. 2 police officers entered, followed by a detective. Francis and Yara? The detective asked. We need to ask you some questions about the night of March 15th, 28 years ago. As they led my parents away, Presley touched my arm. I should have spoken up sooner. I was a coward. Yes, you were. I pulled away from her. But at least you finally told the truth. Outside the hospital, reporters were already gathering. The story was breaking. Prominent family's dark secret, attempted murder and cover-up. What now? Tyrell asked. Now I go see Marie. She deserves to know her truth is finally being heard. At Sunset Grove, Marie was sitting by the window as always. But this time, when I took her hand, her eyes met mine. It's over, I told her. They can't hurt you anymore. They can't hurt us anymore. Her fingers tightened around mine, and for a moment I saw a flash of the woman from the photos, strong, determined, fighting for her daughter. I'm going to visit you every week, I promised. We have 28 years to make up for. My phone buzzed. Olive. Just saw the news. You okay? No, I texted back, but I will be. Sullivan called next. The police are questioning Jessica's family about canceling the wedding. This is a nightmare. The nightmare was living a lie our entire lives, I replied and hung up. Terrell wrapped his arms around me as we left the care facility. You did it. You found your truth. Our truth, I corrected, looking back at Marie's window. Hers and mine. The evening news was already running the story. My parents' mugshots, Marie's old photos, the documents proving their conspiracy. The perfect family facade had finally shattered completely. But as I watched the sun set over the care facility, I felt something I hadn't expected. Peace. The truth had cost me the family I thought I had, but it had given me something more valuable, the family I was meant to have all along. Want to get coffee? Tyrell asked. Actually, I smiled, taking his hand. I want to tell my mother about my day. We walked back into the care facility, leaving behind the cameras, the reporters, and the wreckage of carefully constructed lies. Ahead of me was something better than perfection, reality, with all its messy, beautiful truth. Marie was waiting, and this time, when I started talking, I swore I saw her smile.
Hello, my name is Hannah, a 36-year-old high school teacher who recently discovered that she might inherit over $4 million. Her family is already making big plans. Her husband, Walter, an office worker 3 years her senior, joyfully declared he had quit his job to start a business with the anticipated funds. At the same time, Hannah's mother-in-law is dreamily overseeing the construction of a duplex where they could all live together, featuring her ideal kitchen. Caught in the whirlwind of their plans, Hannah tries to intervene. Wait, I haven't received any inheritance yet. Why are you quitting jobs and building homes? But the enthusiasm is hard to curb. Her father-in-law even suggests a celebratory trip to Florida in the chaos. Despite the confusion and her rising anger, Hannah feels powerless. The thought of her family spending her potential inheritance freely troubles her deeply. This all started a few months back. Hannah's life had been a balance of teaching and raising her daughter, Samantha, who was born shortly after she married Walter. Today, she is visiting her hospitalized mother with Samantha. "Oh, Grandma, it's been a while," Samantha exclaims, greeting her grandmother, who caresses her hair with a frail hand. A mysterious middle-aged man in glasses leaves the room as Hannah enters. Her mother, with eyes sparkling a soft blue, assures Hannah that all is well. Hannah reminisces about her upbringing with her immigrant parents, who had moved from overseas to run a business. Raised with love and financial stability, she credits her success and values to her parents, who instilled in her the importance of education and hard work from a young age. A few years after my father's passing, my mother's health declined, and she was admitted to the hospital. With her health in focus, she handed over the family business to a relative, choosing to spend her days in quiet recovery. "I'm fine, Mom. Do you need anything?" I asked during one of our visits. Her reply warmed my heart. "Just having you and Samantha come to see me is more than enough." Samantha, my 9-year-old daughter, chatted eagerly with her about school and the latest book she'd read. Watching her, I felt a surge of pride. Biased though I may be, Samantha is a bright and honest child who's navigating her formative years beautifully. When we returned home, Walter greeted us with curiosity. "How's my mother-in-law doing?" After updating him, he shared tidbits from a seminar he attended, focusing on starting a side business. Walter's been keen on increasing our income, perhaps driven by a dissatisfaction with his current job, which isn't top tier but stable enough combined with my teaching salary. Sometimes his eagerness for more financial gain, a trait he might have inherited from his parents, feels overwhelming. His parents have always had a knack for penny pinching, often awkwardly asking for money during visits, which has strained our relationship. They rarely spoil Samantha, not even with Christmas gifts, but fortunately they live far enough away that our interactions are minimal. Despite these frictions, our home life is steady. Walter is adept with household chores, and I cherish my days with him, Samantha, and the peaceful life we've built. But then, a sudden call from the hospital turned everything upside down. My mother's condition had drastically worsened, thrusting our family into a rush to be by her side. My mother's breaths were shallow, her voice barely above a whisper as she spoke her last words to me. "Hannah, I always wanted you to be happy. Cherish Samantha more than anything. I love you." Those words, filled with love and care, were the last I heard from her. My mother had dedicated her life to raising me alongside my father and had a special bond with my daughter, Samantha. At her funeral, her expression was serene, and all I could do was weep alongside Samantha, who was equally devastated. Sometime after her passing, a mysterious envelope arrived at our house, bearing the seal of a law firm. Puzzled, I opened it to find a document inside. It stated that I was the sole beneficiary of my mother's will, a topic we had never discussed. With the document in hand, I decided to visit the law firm on my own. "Hello, I'm the attorney, Roy," said the man who greeted me, a middle-aged gentleman with glasses I recognized from the hospital. "You were in my mother's hospital room," I said, remembering his face. "Yes, we met there," he replied. "From that time I was entrusted by your mother." His kind voice nearly brought me to tears again. Then he revealed something astonishing. "Your mother left you an inheritance of $6 million. When your father passed, you waived your right to the inheritance so your mother could receive it all. After taxes, this is the amount you inherit." I was stunned. My parents had been wealthy, but I had never imagined the magnitude of their fortune. After marrying, I never asked them for money and avoided discussing inheritances, considering it bad luck. But here I was, feeling overwhelmed by this final gesture of love from my mother. "Your mother cared about you deeply," Roy continued, his tone reassuring. "She instructed me to assist you if necessary. Please feel free to discuss anything with me." Grateful, I thanked him multiple times and left the office feeling a mix of sorrow and gratitude. As time passed, the weight of this inheritance and my mother's enduring love stayed with me. Around the time of her mother's 50th day memorial service, Hannah found herself increasingly troubled by her family's focus on the inheritance. Her husband, Walter, aware of her family's wealth from the days when her father ran his successful business, began to frequently inquire about the inheritance. Each time he brought it up, Hannah, still deep in mourning, asked him to drop the subject. He would comply, only to later revisit the topic, unable to hide his curiosity about the financial details. The situation worsened during the memorial service itself. Her father-in-law, perhaps trying to appear helpful, awkwardly broached the topic. "Hannah, if you're worried about managing the inheritance, we're here to help. We've dealt with family inheritance issues before. It can get tricky," he offered. His words, meant to reassure, felt hollow to Hannah, given his and her mother-in-law's usual disinterest in offering genuine help. 4 months after her mother's passing, Walter's patience seemed to wane. He confronted Hannah again, this time more directly. "Have you received your mother's inheritance yet?" Feeling a rush of discomfort, Hannah chose to mislead him. "The procedures are complicated, so not yet." In truth, she had already secured the inheritance safely in a deposit box on the advice of Roy, the attorney, but felt it prudent to keep this information private. Walter seemed unusually cheerful as he retreated to the bedroom, leaving Hannah with a sense of foreboding. The next day, as she and her daughter, Samantha, were cleaning up after dinner, the doorbell rang. Samantha rushed to answer it, and when Hannah looked from the kitchen, she saw her in-laws standing at the door with Walter, who had just returned from work. Surprised and a bit apprehensive, Hannah wondered what brought them there unexpectedly. The atmosphere at home became unexpectedly tense when Samantha, sensing the growing unease, anxiously glanced at everyone before retreating to her room at Hannah's urging. "What's happening here?" Hannah asked, hoping to keep the situation calm. "We have something to celebrate today," exclaimed her father-in-law, clearly in high spirits as he pulled a beer from the fridge. Her mother-in-law, carrying the same buoyant mood, chimed in with a dreamy tone. "You've inherited over $4 million, right? We've already started on a duplex for us all to live together. It even has the modern kitchen of my dreams." Hannah, stunned, could barely process their words. "What are you talking about? I told you I haven't received any inheritance yet." Walter, her husband, with a look of satisfaction, revealed his plans. "I quit my job and decided to start a business using that inheritance," he said, assuming the money was already theirs to use. Hannah felt the room spin as her family's assumptions piled up. "You've quit your job, and you're building a house. We haven't received any inheritance yet. Why are you acting like it's a done deal?" Ignoring her protests, Walter and her mother-in-law only grew more enthusiastic, discussing plans for a trip to Florida before the duplex was completed. Then Walter, with a dismissive laugh, accused Hannah of being stingy. "We've checked into it. You can't refuse an inheritance if you don't claim it within 4 months, so whether you've processed it or not, the inheritance is yours." His logic was flawed, but he continued, fueled by misplaced certainty. "Considering the scale of my father's company, it has to be more than $4 million. We'll live comfortably. Be sure to have the money ready for the duplex and my startup capital." Hannah's head spun as she faced the misguided enthusiasm and pressure from her husband and in-laws, feeling trapped in a whirlwind of misunderstanding and expectation. Hannah was at her wit's end, overwhelmed by the audacity of her husband and in-laws, who eagerly plotted to use the inheritance from her mother for their lavish desires. Though anger boiled within her, she couldn't bring herself to erupt. Not with Samantha possibly overhearing from the next room. Needing to escape, she muttered, "I'm going outside for a bit." But her words were lost in their enthusiastic chatter about spending the inheritance. She left the house, wallet forgotten, into the cool embrace of the night. She found solace at a hilltop park, a place steeped in memories of time spent with her mother. There, amidst the solitude, she allowed herself to cry, stifling her sobs. The injustice of the situation gnawed at her. Her family's exploitation of her emotions and their disregard for her feelings. Yet the thought of divorce tangled in her mind. How could she upend Samantha's life? Her mother's parting words, "Take care of Samantha above all else," echoed in her heart, renewing her tears. As she wept, a gentle voice unexpectedly addressed her. Startled, she looked up to find a stranger offering a sympathetic ear. Their conversation over the next few moments provided a sliver of comfort. 5 days later, Hannah summoned her resolve along with her husband and in-laws to a private room in a local restaurant. "So, you finally came back home? Did you withdraw the money?" they asked almost immediately, ignoring the palpable tension. Walter added, "You shouldn't leave home without telling your husband." Ignoring their probing, Hannah reached into her bag and placed a document on the table. It was a completed divorce notice. "Walter, I want a divorce," she declared firmly. The room went silent for a moment before her husband stammered, "What are you saying?" Panic flashed across his face, and the in-laws exchanged bewildered glances. "I can't do this anymore," Hannah continued, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside. Walter's face flushed with anger as he retorted, "You're leaving us after getting the inheritance? You've changed because of the money, you miser." "That's rich," Hannah snapped back, her patience finally breaking. "Ever since I received my mother's estate, you've been out of control. Quitting your job, deciding we'd live with your parents, planning to build a duplex with our savings, all without even asking me. I've had enough." The confrontation marked a turning point as Hannah stood firm against the greed and manipulation that had come to define her relationship with Walter and his parents. As they discussed a potential trip to Florida, the confrontation escalated. "Who is the one who changed when the money came in?" "I can't possibly stay with such people," Hannah stated firmly, her resolve unwavering. "Wait, you can't just divorce me like that?" Walter protested, desperation creeping into his voice. His parents chimed in, "That's right, our savings after marriage are shared property. Half of the inheritance belongs to Walter, no matter what." "That's correct. If it comes to that, we will take $4 million with us," they declared, their faces twisted with greed as they moved closer to Hannah. Just as she was about to retort, the door to the private room slid open. "Dad, Grandpa and Grandma should know better. The inheritance Mom received doesn't become shared property, right, Mr. Roy?" Samantha's voice cut through the tension as she entered the room, followed by Attorney Roy. "And who are you?" Walter demanded, his tone mixed with confusion and irritation. "I'm Attorney Roy. Hannah's mother entrusted me with this matter, and I've been advising Hannah," Roy explained as he and Samantha entered the room. The room fell silent for a moment as Walter looked visibly flustered. "That's all well and good, but wait," Walter stammered, trying to regain his composure. "The inheritance doesn't become shared property?" "That's correct," Roy confirmed. "Inherited property from a deceased parent does not become shared property, nor is it subject to division in a divorce." "You've got to be kidding me. Is this a mistake?" Walter blurted out, his voice tinged with disbelief. Amidst the flustered responses from Walter and his parents, Hannah was taken aback by their blatant assumption that her inheritance was up for grabs. "In that case, it's even more reason not to divorce. I'll cling to you no matter what," Walter exclaimed, his eyes bloodshot with desperation. "Stop it already," Samantha interjected firmly, her calm yet stern voice silencing the room. "Since Mom suggested divorce, has Dad ever thought about Mom once? Grandpa and Grandma only ever talk about money. They never once mentioned me. I can't consider such people as family." Hannah looked at her daughter, her heart swelling with pride yet aching from the bitter truths being unveiled. The room echoed with Samantha's words, underscoring the deep rift that had formed, driven by greed and misunderstanding. On the day I found myself overwhelmed by grief and frustration over my inheritance, it was Samantha who stood by my side. She came running after me, her words fueling my resolve. "Dad, Grandpa, and Grandma are out of line trying to take Grandma's legacy for themselves. Mom, I'm on your side. Let's fight this together." Heartened by her support, I contacted Roy, the attorney, to set up this crucial meeting. In the meeting, my husband and his parents tried to sway Samantha. "Samantha, it's not like that. Dad wants you to be happy," Walter pleaded. His parents added, "You'd be happier living with us, wouldn't you? A child shouldn't interfere." Samantha, visibly frustrated by their words, stood her ground. "I'm going with Mom. I can't bear to be with you anymore," she declared, turning away to avoid their pleading looks. Firmly, I supported her decision. "We've made up our minds. Samantha and I will be leaving." Walter, now angry, retaliated. "Hey, I've never cheated, and you can't just force a divorce. I'll hire a lawyer. We'll get that money one way or another." It was then that Roy spoke up, his voice calm yet assertive. "The issue here is not just about the money. There are serious reasons to consider not continuing this marriage. Walter, you quit your job and used household savings without permission, decided we all should live together. And now Samantha says she can't bear it. These are all significant points we can argue." Roy continued, "Moreover, your daughter recorded everything you and your parents said about trying to claim Hannah's inheritance. That recording can also serve as evidence." Upon hearing this, Walter slumped, defeated, while my in-laws turned pale, realizing the gravity of the situation. The meeting, though tense, had crystallized our path forward, underpinned by the unwavering support between Samantha and me and the competent guidance of Roy. A year after that tumultuous meeting in the restaurant, thanks to diligent legal efforts, my divorce from Walter was finalized. Samantha and I moved into the house where my mother had lived, hoping for a fresh start. However, our peace was occasionally disturbed by letters from Walter proclaiming his love and asking us to come back. More unsettling was seeing him loiter near Samantha's school, prompting us to seek legal help again. This time, we obtained a restraining order to ensure our safety. Life quieted down after that. Rumor had it that Walter and his parents did go through with building a duplex, but life was not kind to them. My retired in-laws had to return to work in a factory, and Walter struggled to find employment, eventually settling for manual labor. From what I heard from neighbors, the duplex was a constant battleground of arguments, earning them an unfavorable reputation in the neighborhood. Meanwhile, Samantha and I enjoyed our peaceful existence, supporting each other through everything. One day, Samantha expressed a desire to study abroad in the country where her grandmother had grown up. Seeing this as an opportunity to cut ties completely with my past life and start anew, we decided to move overseas. We used a portion of my mother's inheritance for this new beginning, a decision I knew my mother would have supported. Now, Samantha thrives in her new school environment, and I have resumed my teaching career abroad. Every day feels like a step forward in our journey towards lasting peace. We hope to continue living these serene days, far removed from the chaos of the past. Hello, I'm Susan, a 30-year-old who married Ronald 4 years ago. Ronald is an incredibly charming and kind-hearted person who makes every day feel special. Unfortunately, this warm sentiment doesn't extend to his mother, Betty, my mother-in-law. For reasons unbeknownst to me, Betty has shown a clear dislike towards me from the start. I understand that Ronald is her beloved son, and she might just be trying to protect him, but there are times when she goes too far. Betty has a way of committing subtle acts that appear harmless, but are actually designed to provoke irritation and paint me as the unreasonable one. We've all met someone like her at some point. Regrettably, she's my mother-in-law. I was raised to speak my mind and rarely hold back, which might be one of the qualities that attracted Ronald to me in the first place. Our differing personalities drew us together. Having studied psychology, I recognize Betty's tactics and underlying ill intentions. Our strong personalities clash, which probably explains why her initial comment to me was about my eating habits, which left everyone at the table in stunned silence. Ronald, though embarrassed, quickly defended me, but Betty insisted she was just concerned about my health, citing older photos where I looked better. Despite feeling mortified and irritated, I remained composed, not wanting to create a scene at our first meeting. As time went on, these uncomfortable incidents became more frequent and intense. Despite bonding well with the rest of Ronald's family and even his childhood friends, Betty's coldness towards me remained unfounded. Even on my wedding day, she tried to impose her opinions, criticizing my appearance in front of others. Yet amidst the chaos, I deeply appreciated the love and acceptance from the rest of Ronald's family. Trying to smooth over her earlier remarks, Betty often backtracks her statements with, "Oh no, darling, that's not what I meant. You have the potential to look so much better." She claims to see a lot of herself in me and acknowledges that I am a bright young woman, despite her continued critiques about my appearance. While I might acknowledge that Betty has her unique kind of beauty, the ongoing challenges with her have left a lingering bitterness and strain that's hard to shake off. Typically, vibrant and outspoken, I found my energy sapped by her persistent efforts to undercut me. Fast forward 4 years to a recent episode that unfolded at Ronald's childhood home, where his parents still live. We were invited over for a Sunday dinner, an invitation that included my brother-in-law Charles, hinting at something significant on the horizon. As the evening progressed, it became clear that the dinner was more than just a casual gathering. Betty grabbed everyone's attention to make a grand announcement with a flourish of a document in hand. "Attention everyone, I have an announcement. With my birthday coming up, I wanted to share my big plans. We're going to Puerto Rico." The news was met with cheers and excitement from around the table. "That sounds fantastic, Betty. What amazing news!" I exclaimed, genuinely excited about the trip. However, Betty turned to me with a starkly different tone. Actually, Susan, you're not coming. Confused, I responded. What do you mean? This wasn't part of the plan. Betty replied matter-of-factly, I made some last-minute changes and canceled your ticket before incurring extra charges. Flabbergasted, I could only ask, why would you do that? Why do you seem to dislike me so much? Amidst the resulting chaos, Charles and I sat in stunned silence as arguments broke out across the table. Eventually, Betty attempted to justify her actions. Okay, fine, I'll tell you why. I believe that as I get older, I should spend my remaining years with those I truly care about. Unfortunately, Susan, you don't make that list. Shocked by her bluntness, Ronald interjected, Mom, really? What's wrong with you? Betty defensively shot back, Nothing's wrong with me. I'm just saying that Susan isn't technically family since she's not related by blood. And by that logic, Charles shouldn't be going either, right? But that's different. Ronald countered, That's ridiculous. Charles is considered family and so is Susan. We're married, she's family too. Betty dismissed this, clinging to her stance. Well, Charles has always been our sweet baby angel, but Susan hasn't. I'm just not comfortable with her coming on the trip. It's my birthday, and I want to be surrounded by those I'm closest to. This painful exclusion starkly highlighted the ongoing challenges in our relationship, revealing the deep divides that Betty's attitudes had fostered within the family. As the tension in the room peaked, I stood firm, my voice resolute as it echoed, capturing the attention of everyone, including Betty, who until now had been smirking discreetly. However, seeing my determination, her expression quickly shifted to seriousness. Betty, it's clear from day one that you've held a grudge against me. For 4 years, I've tolerated your difficult behavior. Do you think we're oblivious to your actions? Do you really believe we can't see your self-centeredness? Betty snapped back. Watch your tone, young lady. Remember, you're in my house, and you won't be for much longer. I'm about to leave, but before I do, I have something important to say, I declared, turning to face my beloved husband, whose eyes were filled with anger and pain as he stared at his mother. Darling, I love you completely. I've tried to endure to bridge the gap your mother has so fervently kept open, but she will never accept me as part of this family. No matter how much I hold back or how hard I try, she will always find fault with me. You should still go on this trip. Despite everything, she's your mother, and you love her. Don't worry about me. I'll be fine. Then, turning back to Betty, who seemed taken aback by my directness, I continued, And as for you, Betty, unfortunately for you, I am deeply in love with your son, and I am not going anywhere. You might think you can push me out, but I'm here to stay. Even in Puerto Rico, I'll be in your thoughts. Let's face it, I think you're oddly fixated on me. Betty, visibly angered, interjected, How dare you? I ought to. I'm done letting you try to tear me down. I cut her off firmly. I can't understand why when all I've ever done is offer kindness and patience, even when it was the last thing you deserved, but enough is enough. If you don't want me in Puerto Rico or as part of this family, that's fine, but as long as I breathe, I will be here for Ronald, for Larry, and for Charles, but never for you. At that moment, it seemed as if I had finally left her speechless. She stood, mouth agape, struggling to find the words her pride wouldn't allow her to say. I said my goodbyes to the other family members, gave Ronald a reassuring kiss on the cheek, and headed for the door. Ronald called after me, Let me drive you home at least. I can't let you take a cab. Don't worry about me, babe. I love you. I reassured him, leaving the house with my head held high, empowered by my stand. Thank you for your love, but I'll be fine. You should go discuss your trip, I said, trying to ease the tension as Ronald offered to drive me home. Okay, if you say you'll be fine, I'll trust you. Oh, and don't forget your purse, he reminded me. Right, my purse, I murmured, realizing I had left it in the kitchen. When I walked into the kitchen to retrieve it, I found Betty there, likely taking a moment to herself after our heated exchange. What do you want? She snapped as soon as she saw me. "Don't worry about me, sweetheart. I'm just here to grab my things," I replied, trying to keep the situation from escalating further. "Well, make it quick. I want you out of my house," she retorted, still fuming. "I can't believe the things you said to me," Betty added before storming out of the room, too angry to even see me off. With a soft scoff at her dramatic exit, I grabbed my purse and noticed a piece of paper beside it. Curious, I picked it up, thinking it might be the trip itinerary, but instead I found it was a letter in Betty's handwriting addressed to Charles. "Dearest Charles, you've always been like a son to me, and I love you dearly," it began. The sentiment seemed strange but heartfelt. Driven by curiosity, I continued to read. "The love and care you've shown me throughout the years will never be forgotten. Regrettably, even with my son Ronald, I feel the love we once shared is no longer there." This line stopped me cold. Was Betty implying she loved Charles more than her son, Ronald? That seemed impossible. As I read further, each line deepened my shock. Though I knew it wasn't right to read someone else's letter, I couldn't tear my eyes away from the revealing words. After finishing, I paced the kitchen, contemplating my next move. Realizing that everyone who needed to know about this letter was still in the house, I knew it was time to act. Confirming the contents once more, I walked into the dining room where only a few pairs of eyes met mine. Larry, Ronald's father, immediately expressed his sympathy. "Susan, I am profoundly sorry for what my wife is subjecting you to. Don't worry, you're coming to Puerto Rico with us. Betty is just going through a rough patch. I'll talk to her and make her see the reason. I don't know what's gotten into her, but I'll sort it out, I promise. Larry, please don't worry about me. As I mentioned, I'm fine. I've stumbled upon some interesting news," I hinted, holding the letter discreetly. My words hung in the air, hinting at a shift in the dynamics that evening, as the letter's contents might just change everything. I needed to share something important with everyone, especially Ronald and Charles. Ronald's expression turned anxious, possibly fearing I was too overwhelmed by his mother's behavior and considering a break from our marriage. He always empathized deeply whenever I vented about his mother's antics, astonished at how I managed to endure them. "It's my love for you that keeps me strong," I would always reassure him. Noticing Betty wasn't in the room, I asked, "Where's Betty? She needs to hear this too." Larry responded, "She mentioned a headache after your confrontation and opted for a nap upstairs. She won't be down for a while. You know how she values her beauty sleep." Frustrated by her absence, yet familiar with Betty's habits that often seemed to conveniently excuse her from uncomfortable situations, I sighed. "This is crucial. She has to be here." "It's okay, Susan. You can share with us, and we'll fill her in when she wakes up," Larry assured me. Pausing, torn between wanting Betty to face this revelation directly and not wanting to prolong Ronald's anxiety, I decided to proceed. "All right, I'll share what I found," I said, observing Ronald's growing unease. While I was in the kitchen getting my purse ready to leave, I stumbled upon something rather intriguing, I continued, retrieving the letter from my purse. As I began to read it aloud, the room fell silent, hanging on every word. The letter read, "Dearest Charles, you know you have always been like a son to me, and I love you dearly. The love and care you've shown me throughout the years will never be forgotten. I hate to admit it, but even with my son Ronald, I feel as though the love we once shared is no longer there. Ronald and I just don't see eye to eye like we used to, and honestly, I think it's because of Susan. Ever since he married her, he no longer has time for me. He doesn't show me love, and therefore I don't think I can continue loving him as I once did. I love you, and you are my son. With that being said, I want to let you know that I am going to update my will so that you will inherit all of my belongings, not Ronald." The room was heavy with silence after I finished reading. I looked around, seeing shock and confusion in their eyes. This letter, this declaration from Betty, not only revealed deep-seated resentments, but threatened to shift the familial dynamics significantly. It was a moment of truth that would inevitably bring about tough conversations and decisions within the family. Honestly, at this point, I'm beyond caring. It's that Susan. She's the reason my feelings for Ronald have changed. I hope this letter reaches you well. The reason I couldn't bring this up in person is, and it pains me to say this, I couldn't bear to see your possible rejection. I know you see Ronald like a brother, and you might not agree with my decision, but that doesn't matter to me anymore. I'm leaving everything to you, the money, the house, the cars, and even my small businesses. They're all yours, whether you agree or not. If you want to discuss this, please call me. I look forward to your response. I will love you forever and always, your second mom. After reading the letter, I looked up to see a whirlwind of emotions around the room. Larry seemed on the verge of tears. Charles was shocked, and Ronald looked like he was about to lose his temper. I can't believe she wrote all this. Is she serious? So she's cutting me out of the will just to spite me and Susan? Ronald exclaimed, incredulous and angry. She's completely lost it. I don't even know what to say anymore. This has gone way too far. I'm so tired of her toxic behavior. In that charged moment, an idea struck me. A week passed, and it was time for the planned trip to Puerto Rico. That morning, Betty found a note from her husband on her bedside table. It read, "Good morning, beautiful. We decided to let you catch up on your beauty sleep. Don't worry, your bags are packed. Just meet us at the airport." Betty hurriedly got ready and rushed to the airport, searching for her family. She tried calling them, but no one answered. Assuming they had already boarded, she took her flight, hoping to catch up with them in Puerto Rico. After enduring the 10-hour flight, she landed and immediately video called Larry. "Hey, Larry, where are you guys? I woke up late and found your note, but none of you were answering. I assumed you boarded without me. Where are you? Let's start the festivities." "That won't be happening, Betty." "What do you mean? Where are you?" "I'm at home, Betty." "What? Why are you at home?" "You see, Betty, Susan brought some important information to our attention last week. Since discovering that information, we decided that we'd rather spend time in Los Angeles with Susan than go anywhere with you," Larry explained as Betty gasped in disbelief. "You think we wouldn't find out?" Ronald interjected angrily. "Don't baby me. You were going to cut me out of your will, Mom? How did you even find out about that?" "That so-called wretched girl you despise, Susan, found your letter in the kitchen," Larry added, his voice firm. "I don't know what you're talking about," Betty replied, her voice wavering slightly. "Lying right now is only making things worse, Betty," I said calmly. "Charles, tell them." "You've got to believe me. I did nothing of the sort," Betty pleaded. "We all read the letter, Betty. The game is up," Charles stated plainly. "But I didn't do anything. Susan is making everything up," Betty protested weakly. "Oh, am I? You are so pathetic it actually makes me sick," I countered, my frustration peaking. "We all know what you said and what you tried to do. Thank goodness I was curious enough to read the whole thing." "Ronald, Larry, please." Betty tried to appeal to them. "No, Betty, enough is enough. You're done. You don't get to say anything else. Your hatred has caused you to be blind. Now you have to deal with the consequences of being alone on your birthday because of what you've done," Larry declared firmly. "But I'll be alone. It won't be fun," Betty whimpered, the reality of her situation dawning on her. "Maybe people would like to hang out with you more if you weren't such a raging witch," I retorted, finality in my voice. "Have fun." With that, Larry ended the call. We all let out a collective sigh of relief. I was the first to start laughing, a nervous, disbelieving chuckle that soon spread. Ronald joined in, followed by Charles, and before we knew it, we were all roaring with laughter at the dining table, overwhelmed by the sheer absurdity of the situation. The image of Betty's face, pale and drained as she realized the game was up, was unforgettable. It was clear that this was the first time in a long while that Betty had felt truly embarrassed. Left to spend her vacation alone, she frequently called Larry, pleading with him to join her. She didn't want to cancel the expensive reservations she had made, but Larry consistently refused, stating that they would need to set some strict ground rules if she wanted to continue their marriage upon her return. Betty's response to the situation was a complete turnaround from her usual demeanor. She became apologetic and frantic, which was a genuine surprise to everyone. Ronald also made it clear that if Betty wanted to remain a part of his life, she would need to make a drastic change in her attitude. He was firm in his resolve, warning that he was prepared to cut ties with her permanently if she ever disrespected him again, even with the smallest negative remark, just as she had initially planned to do to him through her will. As for Charles, he decided it was time to stop being overly accommodating to Betty, realizing that his behavior had only enabled her toxic actions. Consequently, Betty not only endured a miserable time in what should have been a beautiful vacation, but also faced the real risk of losing the three most important men in her life. Her relationships with them had become strained, and it was clear she needed to change dramatically. Regarding my stance, I sent Betty a message stating that I needed time to decide if I could forgive her for all the wrongs she had done. She replied apologetically, begging me to persuade the men to reconsider their positions. However, I refused, telling her that she had made her bed and now she had to lie in it. To this day, Betty is still trying to repair the deeply damaged relationship she caused. I just hope that through this difficult time she has learned her lesson. Hello, my name is Alice, and I'm currently 45 years old. I live with my husband, our daughter, and unfortunately with my husband's mother and sister as well. It's hard to say we live happily. I work from home, but peace is scarce in this house. The ongoing tension stems from my mother-in-law and sister-in-law Jessica, who have shown nothing but disdain and neglect towards me for over a decade. As my daughter Glory grew older, their behavior bothered me less, but the discord was always there. I initially started my career as an astrologer, but as my blog gained popularity, I shifted towards becoming a life coach, specializing in customer attraction, which aligns with my current profession. I met my husband Willie during my training as an astrologer, introduced by a friend. Willie, who was working in sales at a medicinal company and dabbling in affiliate marketing, offered me invaluable advice on customer engagement. Attracted by his kindness and support, we started dating and married within a year, despite our modest beginnings. Willie has always been my rock. I'm incredibly grateful to have married him. Our arrangement to live with my in-laws started about a year after our wedding. It was a sudden decision prompted by the unexpected death of my father-in-law. Feeling uncertain about her future, my mother-in-law asked if she could move in with us. In return for her help with household chores, we agreed. At first, my mother-in-law seemed delighted with our new living arrangement. I was optimistic that we would build a good relationship. However, just 3 months later, the atmosphere changed. She began to ignore me, possibly upset that I wasn't helping enough with the housework. Soon, my sister-in-law Jessica also started to exclude me. Being ignored wasn't the worst part. The real challenge was my mother-in-law's tendency to complain to others. She didn't just vent to Jessica. She told neighbors and relatives that I claimed to work from home, but left all the housework to her. If I ever responded, she claimed I was overly confrontational, so she chose to simply ignore me. To complicate matters, she advised others to avoid talking to me, claiming it would be troublesome. This led to many giving me only lukewarm responses or outright ignoring my greetings. I felt increasingly isolated, and despite my pleas for her to stop spreading these unfounded rumors, my words fell on deaf ears. There was a slight softening in her attitude when my daughter Glory was born, 3 years after we started living together. Although her overall demeanor towards me barely shifted, she was very fond of Glory, and her assistance with household duties and childcare was genuinely helpful, especially as my workload increased. Around the same time, Willie's side business in affiliate marketing began to falter. and he struggled to adapt to the changing market. Willie approached me one day asking if I could contribute a bit more to our monthly expenses. I reassured him that my consulting business was doing well, thanks to some new strategies I had implemented. Despite my openness to collaborate on boosting his sales, Willie preferred to handle it independently. He said, "I'll try it on my own? I'm really sorry." From the onset of our marriage, we had agreed that Willie would manage our finances. Initially, my income was modest, but as it grew, so did my willingness to support our family further. Willie was always a bit hesitant about involving me financially, but as my consulting sales improved, he became more open to accepting my contributions. Initially, I could only spare $200 monthly, but as my earnings grew, I was able to increase my contributions, sometimes even up to $2,000, although this wasn't consistent every month. I had the option to give more by dipping into our savings, but I was cautious not to overextend our finances. Willie struggled with his side business, and his pride often kept him from seeking my advice. He started spending more evenings out, often at cafes, coming home later each night. Around the time our daughter Glory was 6 years old, Jessica, my sister-in-law, got married and moved out. Although she didn't move far and often visited, bringing her young son Eric to our house. When Eric turned 1, Jessica decided to start working part-time. My mother-in-law enthusiastically offered to watch Eric until the evenings, which Jessica gratefully accepted. However, as my mother-in-law grew more attached to her grandson Eric, she started treating Glory less warmly. Whenever the children quarreled, she was quick to scold Glory, often unfavorably comparing her to Eric. Glory, feeling the unfair treatment, began to stay close to me and grew resentful of her grandmother's behavior. I felt compelled to speak up, urging my mother-in-law to treat both grandchildren equally, reminding her that Glory was now a big sister and in elementary school.
Despite these family tensions, my professional life was thriving. My blog and consulting services were attracting more clients, and I was making significantly more than during my days as an astrologer. When Willie came to me, expressing concern over his company's financial health and hinting at possible missed bonuses, he asked if I could contribute even more to our expenses. I was already providing $3,000 monthly, and his request made me reflect on our financial dynamics. Willie admitted that his income had decreased and that his side business was failing. He felt ashamed, but I reassured him, emphasizing that as a couple, we should support each other through tough times. My contributions continued to increase, eventually reaching $5,000 a month. Despite this, I respected Willie's desire to manage our household finances, careful not to bruise his pride. However, when Glory entered 7th grade, Jessica unexpectedly returned home with Eric, following a divorce sparked by her infidelity. This added a new layer of complexity to our already strained family dynamics. At this point, Glory had grown up enough to help with household chores, so the responsibilities were distributed among each of us. My mother-in-law and Jessica's continued disregard for me no longer affected me as much. However, it was disheartening that Glory couldn't have her room when she started middle school because Jessica's return had filled all available spaces in our home. One evening, while discussing which tutoring school Glory should attend for middle school, Jessica interjected abruptly, "Tutoring is expensive. Why doesn't Glory just study on her own?" I responded firmly, "I'm covering the cost of the tutoring, so it isn't any of your concern." Jessica scoffed. "What, you're paying? Impossible. You don't earn anything. Willie said he's the one supporting you. You're just a leech, aren't you? Ha ha ha. You married him for his money, right?" Willie, trying to maintain peace, intervened. "Don't speak ill of Alice. It's unwarranted." But Jessica retorted, "That's just shameless." Her words filled my mind with doubts and questions. What exactly had Willie been telling his family about our financial situation? Had he portrayed himself as the sole provider? Jessica's insinuations continued. "It's about time we ended this parasite lifestyle. I feel bad for Glory, but if we pay for her tutoring, we won't be able to afford my compensation. Are you saying our household funds are covering your compensation? I asked, puzzled. Willie said he would handle it. You should be using your own money for Eric. As the conversation unfolded, I began to grasp the depth of the deception. I had always thought that my mother-in-law and the rest of the family knew about my financial contributions, as Willie had been managing our finances. However, it appeared that Willie had let everyone believe that he was shouldering all the financial responsibilities, including Jessica's living expenses and her compensation. My mother-in-law snapped, "Be quiet. It's only natural for a family. You're the outsider here, not related by blood, and yet you act as if living here is your right. It makes me angry. What you contribute is barely enough to cover your food expenses. You hardly have any income, and yet you're so arrogant." Feeling my body tremble with anger, I saw Glory out of the corner of my eye, her expression one of distress. I had always known Willie took pride in being the provider, but I hadn't realized the extent to which this pride had influenced our family dynamics. While it was true that Willie initially handled the living expenses and pocket money for my mother-in-law and Jessica, over time my income had increased significantly. We were now largely living off my earnings, though it seemed nobody in the household was aware of this. I knew it was crucial to have a serious conversation with Willie about our financial situation. He returned home around midnight, visibly drunk but in a jovial mood. Seizing the moment, I asked, "Can we talk? I didn't know you weren't getting any money from your mother or Jessica. They seem to think you're covering all our household expenses." With a sheepish grin, Willie replied, "About that, my bad. It's a matter of pride for me as a man. When we first started living together, I was the one paying for everything. There never seemed to be a right moment to clarify that you were also contributing, especially in front of the family. Let me play the role of the responsible eldest son, please." His tone was lighthearted, almost like he was acting out a scene from a comedy sketch. "Oh, and by the way," Willie added as he clasped his hands together in a mock-serious gesture, "I'm heading out this Saturday for a seminar in Conan. I've been invited by a friend who I'm doing a side business with. I'm going to make it a success, so cheer for me, Alice. Well, I'm off to sleep. See you tomorrow." With that, he laid down on the mat, still in high spirits, and quickly fell into a deep, snoring sleep. Despite his cheerful demeanor, my frustration didn't fade. Willie's late nights had become more frequent, and we hadn't had a proper discussion in a long time. His drunken admission seemed almost like a joke, but come the weekend, Willie truly did leave with a large suitcase. In Willie's absence, I decided it was a good time to take Glory back to my parents' house for a change of scenery. However, upon our return, we were met with a shocking sight. Piles of trash bags were stacked in front of our entrance. Upon closer inspection, it was horrifying to discover that these bags contained mine and Glory's belongings, tossed together as if they were mere garbage. "What is this? Why is this happening?" I exclaimed, bewildered and upset. Glory, in tears, pulled her beloved stuffed animal from one of the bags and hugged it tightly. Angry and confused, I approached the front door, only to find that the locks had been changed while we were away. It was clear that this was the doing of my mother-in-law and Jessica. I rang the doorbell and knocked several times, but there was no response. Peering into another bag, I found a note that read, "Parasites disappear, never come back." A surge of anger welled up within me. "The real parasites are you," I shouted, unable to contain my fury. This was the most hurtful and disrespectful treatment I had ever received from my in-laws in all 13 years, and the fact that they made my daughter suffer in this way was utterly unbearable. My patience finally shattered under the weight of mounting anger. I hastily packed our belongings into the car and drove back to my parents' house, vowing never to return to my in-laws. "I'm curious to see how the parasites manage without their host," I muttered, frustrated and hurt. Upon our arrival, my parents were taken aback by the situation. I hadn't shared the full extent of the neglect and financial issues orchestrated by my in-laws, nor their disdainful treatment towards Glory. I didn't want to cause them unnecessary worry. Yet, seeing the condition we were in, they were visibly upset. "You don't have to go back there. You should seek compensation," they insisted, their voices thick with anger. My mother's empathetic words, "You really had it tough," brought me to tears. For so long, I had been struggling silently, but no more. Resolved to face my feelings head-on while at my parents' home, I reached out to a friend who had introduced me to Willie. She was well connected with Willie's business circle. "How are you? I need to ask something. Do you know if Willie's friends are at that big entrepreneur seminar in Conan?" I inquired. She replied, "I was invited but declined." "Willie didn't go, did he?" She casually mentioned hearing that Willie had quit his job and was now running a business with his wife. "You two must be close," she added. I managed a nonchalant response and quickly ended the call. Prompted by this conversation, I contacted Willie's company only to discover that he had indeed quit his job 3 years ago. This revelation meant I had been solely covering nearly all our living expenses without knowing the full extent of our financial situation. Reflecting on these discoveries left me feeling empty. A week later, Willie messaged me, casually mentioning he was back in the U.S. After a period of ignoring him, I ceased hearing from him altogether until I assumed he got wind of what had happened at home. Expecting him to reach out persistently, I hired a detective to delve deeper into his activities. The investigation painted a troubling picture. Willie, dressed impeccably in the mornings, spent his afternoons gambling and his evenings at another woman's house. This prompted me to also investigate his possible infidelity. 2 weeks later, Willie called, his voice laced with panic, likely timed with what would have been his former company's payday. "Alice, I'm sorry I haven't been in touch. I'm sorry for what my family did. I heard they kicked you out, and I've been trying to understand why it all happened." He hurriedly shifted the topic and then made a startling proposal. "Let's leave that house and start anew, just the 3 of us. I'm ready to cut ties with anyone who has mistreated you, including my mother and Jessica. Please come back."
"Are you prepared to cut ties with your mother and Jessica?" I questioned, skeptical of his sudden decision to abandon them after making them dependent on him for so long. Disappointed in Willie's self-centered actions, I struggled to reconcile the man I married with the one who now seemed so willing to discard his own family so easily. Resolute and prepared for confrontation, I messaged Willie, "I'm coming back, leave the door unlocked." His response seemed hesitant, but a few days later, I returned to the in-laws' house with Glory in tow. Willie was there, along with his mother and Jessica. Thankfully, Eric was not present to witness the tense adult exchanges. As soon as we entered, I could feel the tension. Willie tried to engage, but I ignored his attempts and instead pulled out a divorce form from my bag. Facing Willie squarely, I confronted him. "I heard you quit your job without telling me. Since we're supposedly managing a business together, does that mean the $5,000 I've been transferring every month was covering your salary?" Willie fumbled for an excuse. "No, that's not it. I told you the business was in trouble, so I decided to quit before getting fired." "But you quit 3 years ago, didn't you?" I pressed on. "I called your company and it's still up and running, not bankrupt as you implied." Willie's discomfort was palpable. He began to sweat under the scrutiny. "And what exactly is your role in our so-called joint business management? Are you the accountant?" His evasion continued as I turned to his mother. "Willie is supporting the whole family, isn't he? He quit his job, his side business isn't doing well, and yet it's a mystery where the money is coming from." "I'm leaving, but please continue to get financial support from Willie," I stated dryly. The color drained from my mother-in-law and Jessica's faces. "Just the other day on the phone, Willie, you were crying, begging to save only yourself, saying you'd cut ties with your mother and sister. But that's not going to happen. I'm also discarding Willie here." Willie tried to intervene.
What do you mean? I haven't been going to work. That's a lie. I live in a suit every morning. It's true. Alice has been covering all expenses for years. I'm unemployed now and not doing any side business. We're going to have a hard life because you guys kicked Alice out. We could have had an easy life without working if you hadn't done anything unnecessary, I declared. As the commotion escalated among Willie, his mother, and Jessica, Glory and I began to collect our things. I retrieved a recently purchased cleaning robot, an expensive microwave my mother-in-law favored, and a beauty device gifted to Jessica by Willie. This is mine since I bought it with my money, or you can pay me back for it, I stated firmly as Jessica fell silent at my assertion. Then I searched their rooms for my expensive brand bags and accessories, which were conspicuously missing from the items they had earlier put out as trash. Why are you taking that too? They protested. This is mine, I replied, dismissing their complaints and ignoring their attempts to sweet-talk their way out of the situation. Finally, I dropped one last revelation. Oh, I forgot to mention. I plan to claim compensation from your mistress Amy. Tell her it's no use running away. Willie's face turned white. How do you know about her? His shock was evident, marking the unraveling of the facade he had maintained for so long. Upon confronting Willie, I firmly stated, I know you went to Conan with Amy recently. Good for you, right? Of course, I have all the evidence of the affair, so there's no escaping that. You've been deceiving me and having fun for the past 3 years. I'll be claiming compensation for the affair, child support for Glory, and, oh, the compensation you were secretly paying Jessica. I'll be claiming that back as well. As I prepared to leave, my mother-in-law and Jessica made a desperate attempt to stop me. I was wrong, Alice. I'm sorry. We just believed what Willie said. We can't live without you. We'll do anything. Please help us, my mother-in-law pleaded. Jessica added, I can't pay you back for the compensation. I'm sorry too. I apologize for everything. You'll forgive us, right? I couldn't help but laugh at their desperate expressions, finally realizing who had been truly supporting their lifestyle. It dawned on them too late that their non-blood-related support was leaving. Let's just ignore these people, Mom. Let's go home, I said to Glory. Yes, that's right, Willie. You'll be hearing from my lawyer soon. Please take care of it, I stated coldly, leaving a dejected Willie behind as we returned home with the items we had collected. Later, my divorce from Willie was finalized through a lawyer, and I demanded compensation. My mother-in-law and Jessica sent numerous apologies and pleas for reconciliation, but I ignored them all. Surprisingly, there was still some inheritance left from Willie's father. The fact that they had been living off my money without using their resources infuriated me again. However, the inheritance wasn't enough to cover the compensation, and ultimately they had to sell the house to make a lump sum payment. This included the compensation I had been paying for Jessica. I don't know what became of Willie's family afterward. I hope Willie can take care of his family, but ultimately, he will choose his path. I also claimed compensation from Willie's mistress, which led to an unexpected revelation. Through the lawyer, I informed her that Willie was unemployed and I had been supporting the family. Willie had deceived her, claiming he was a successful entrepreneur. They broke up after an argument. Glory and I moved to an apartment, and I was finally able to give her the room she had longed for. Reflecting on the past 13 years, I don't think they were wasted, but sometimes I wonder if I should have made a decision sooner when I started being ignored. Now I feel happy that my home is a peaceful place, free from the turmoil of the past. Hello, my name is Nancy, and at the age of 29, I am ambitiously pursuing my career goals. Currently, I live with my husband, Benjamin. Recently, I've been thinking seriously about the possibility of starting a family. However, Benjamin feels that we should prioritize building and settling into a new home before we consider having children. Consequently, we are both working hard to save up for our future residence, even though I would love to begin our family sooner rather than later. Benjamin's firm stance on this matter becomes clear every time we discuss the possibility of children. He consistently emphasizes the importance of establishing our home first, which I find disheartening as it often feels like he dismisses my feelings. It seems I have no choice but to push myself even harder to contribute more to our savings. We have been married for a year, and I have begun to recognize a recurring theme in our relationship. Benjamin seldom takes my viewpoints into account, a habit that has continued from our dating days. While I once admired his decisiveness, I now realize that mutual respect for opinions is crucial in a marriage. I am increasingly concerned about the stability of our relationship, especially given the influence of his parents who live nearby. Benjamin often visits his parents under the pretext of saving money. However, I've noticed that he frequently spends time with his colleagues, enjoying drinks and not factoring these outings into his strict budget. It baffles me how he holds me to rigorous saving standards while allowing himself certain liberties. His frugality even reaches into minor details such as conserving hot water and turning off lights prematurely, rules that he seems to apply only to me. Our relationship feels increasingly lopsided. Although I am deeply frustrated, he seems to think it's reasonable to enforce his way of thinking on others. Whenever we visit his parents, tensions rise. "It's been a year since you two got married. We'd love some good news soon," my in-laws often exclaim, eager to meet their grandchild. At these moments, I catch Benjamin giving a disapproving look, silently signaling them to avoid unnecessary comments. As these pressures mount, I find myself at a crossroads, questioning how we can find a balance that respects both our dreams and the practical aspects of our lives together. While Benjamin and I both yearn for a child, he insists that we should build our own home before expanding our family. It's quite unfair how my in-laws pressure me about having a baby rather than speaking to Benjamin, who seems indifferent to my feelings about the timing. Despite my urge to speak out, I often find myself muted by their relentless expectations for a grandchild. After dinner, Benjamin walks out for a smoke and remarks, "Nancy, you're working hard, but if you really want to be a housewife, you should consider quitting your job and focusing on home life. Maybe that's why you're not getting the attention you need from Benjamin." It's as if he's implying that my career is the reason we can't start a family, which is unfair and untrue. Benjamin himself isn't ready to have children anytime soon. Frustrated, I respond sharply to my in-law. "Benjamin was the one who encouraged me to keep working. Why don't you talk to him before you lecture me again?" My patience wears thin as I continue. "I want children too, but Benjamin is the one who's not ready. Please direct your concerns to him instead of constantly criticizing me." My words seem to shock my in-laws. I excuse myself from the table and head towards the door, my frustration boiling. Benjamin, casually smoking by the entrance, doesn't say a word. As I get into the car, a friend who had joined us for dinner follows and casually remarks, "Are you leaving already?" She's unaware of the tension. Exhausted by the recurring pressures from my in-laws and Benjamin's indifference, I finally declare that I won't be visiting the in-laws' home anymore. Benjamin looks at me surprised and argues, "Why not? We can save on food costs, right? Besides, you want a home and kids soon, don't you?" Fed up, I snap back. "If it's really about saving, then maybe you should cut back on your drinking and smoking rather than driving to your parents just to save the cost of a meal."
Why can't you make savings in those ways too? Everyone needs a break. I voiced my frustration. Benjamin had always imposed restrictions on me, like avoiding the use of hot water and mandating lights off by 9 p.m., under the guise of saving money. He seemed to think that making these changes wouldn't require any real sacrifices. If I'm the only one making these adjustments, then I don't even want this house. I'm so tired of it. You never give up anything yourself, but you're perfectly fine demanding sacrifices from others, I protested. Benjamin tried to brush off my concerns, suggesting they weren't significant, but I firmly countered, "No, it is a big deal. Do you realize how much patience I've had to muster all this time?" His ongoing pretense in front of his parents
acting as though I was the reason we couldn't have grandchildren, infuriated me further. I'm tired of being pressured about grandchildren. It's not me who's hesitant about having children. It's Benjamin. I've been clear about wanting them soon. So please stop this constant pressure, I continued, my voice steeped in exasperation. Seeing Benjamin struggle to respond to my uncharacteristic outburst brought a bitter sense of satisfaction. But it didn't solve our underlying issues. Feeling uncertain about what to do next, I just stared out of the car window, ignoring Benjamin. A turning point came a month later when a relative of mine, my father's brother, passed away. He left behind several pieces of land and a luxurious mansion and lived a lavish lifestyle. Benjamin's eyes widened when he learned of my uncle's impressive estate. "I didn't realize you had such a remarkable relative," he commented a few days after hearing about my inheritance. I decided to discuss the inheritance details with a lawyer in our apartment. Knowing the matter was exclusively mine and seeing Benjamin's discomfort with the idea of inheritance, I politely asked him to step out of the room to avoid any potential complications his presence might cause. After about 5 hours of detailed explanations from the lawyer, I thanked him and saw him out. Surprisingly, when I turned around, Benjamin was not in the apartment. Assuming he had stepped out to give us privacy, I began preparing dinner, unaware of the changes that lay ahead. 4 months later, Benjamin would come to me with an unexpected confession. Benjamin's unexpected invitation for a drive filled me with a mix of excitement and curiosity. As we drove into a residential area, my curiosity turned to confusion when we stopped in front of a house unfamiliar to me. Benjamin pressed the intercom, and to my surprise, my in-laws stepped out. Not from their usual home, but from this new one. My father-in-law beamed, exclaiming, "You finally made it. So when are you and Nancy moving in? We're thinking of moving in by the end of this month." His next words were less welcoming. He accused me of being a selfish daughter-in-law and of shifting the responsibility of having children onto Benjamin. I shot Benjamin a disapproving look, bewildered as to why he would bring me here when I had made it clear that I didn't want to visit my in-laws anymore. Seeking clarity, I asked Benjamin for an explanation. He responded almost too calmly, "Don't be so upset. If we live together, it can help mend the relationship between you and my mom. Besides, this will be our new home from now on, so you should be more cooperative about the children's issues." His revelation stunned me. I had expressly stated I didn't want to live with them, yet here he was announcing plans that were already set in motion without my agreement. The house, as Benjamin explained, was a 2-family residence. My plan was always for us to eventually live with my parents. "So what's the problem with living in a 2-family house now?" he asked, as if the arrangement should have been obvious. As I mulled over the situation, the implications of living in such a house became clear, especially in light of our finances. Constructing such a grand house seemed beyond our means, and I couldn't understand how Benjamin managed it. "My dad and I chipped in the money, so our savings are empty, but that's fine, right?" Benjamin said nonchalantly, revealing a complete disregard for our mutual financial planning. He then added, "I heard your uncle's inheritance was about $720,000, so if you use that money to repay us for the cost of this 2-family house, it should all work out, huh?" His assumption that my inheritance would simply be used to cover these expenses without my consent left me astounded. The audacity of his plan, assuming I would finance these arrangements unilaterally, was not only presumptive but deeply unsettling. Frustrated with the entire ordeal, Benjamin delved into his bag and pulled out a pre-filled divorce form with his name already scribbled on it. "Your money is our money. If you don't like living together, let's just get a divorce," he declared confidently. Taking the form from his hand, I replied resolutely, "Fine, if those are the only options, then divorce is the better choice for me." I slipped the divorce form into my bag, turned my back on him and my stunned in-laws,
and walked away without heeding their reactions. As I walked out, I mentioned offhandedly, "By the way, I renounced my uncle's inheritance." Benjamin stood frozen, his face etched with confusion. Without waiting for any response, I caught a bus and returned to our apartment. Once home, I filled in my name on the divorce form that already bore Benjamin's, finalized it, and promptly submitted the divorce papers. Then, I went to a home improvement store, bought several cardboard boxes, and started preparing for my move. Recognizing I couldn't manage the move alone, I hired a moving company. Luckily, it was a slow season for moves, allowing for a quick relocation. As I packed, I heard Benjamin arrive at the door. I had the chain lock on and called out, "Sorry, I had the chain on. I'm not sure what you might do in your current state of anger. Besides, I need to finish packing. Could you stay at your parents' house for a few days?" Defiantly, Benjamin said, "I won't accept a divorce." His statement surprised me. I reminded him, "But you handed me the divorce form, didn't you? If you sign the divorce papers, that means you agree to the divorce, you know." Benjamin looked puzzled and frustrated, quickly changing the subject. "Why would you give up on a $720,000 inheritance? Normally, you'd inherit it," he questioned, clearly having caught bits of information about the inheritance but misunderstanding the situation. It seemed he had overheard some details about the $720,000 inheritance and, in a rush, had gone to my in-laws. They, in turn, impulsively bought the two-family house without considering the full implications. I clarified, the inheritance discussion was mine to handle, and renouncing it was my decision, made to avoid exactly these kinds of entanglements and presumptions. Given the complexity of my uncle's estate, renouncing the inheritance seemed the wisest choice. Though he had $720,000, the costs associated with his assets were enormous. His mansion required demolition, the land demanded significant upkeep, and he had accrued substantial debts. Despite having 2 sons, 2 daughters, a wife, and grandchildren, all had chosen to renounce their claims, leaving the inheritance to me. When I explained this to Benjamin, he was incredulous. "No way. So you're saying that even with $720,000, there wouldn't have been much left? That sounds like fraud," he exclaimed. I clarified that after a thorough discussion with the lawyer, it became clear that the inheritance was more of a burden than a boon. Unfortunately, someone had eavesdropped on part of this conversation and misunderstood the full context. My explanation left Benjamin speechless, and it seemed he finally realized his mistake. However, I firmly told him, "It's too late now. You betrayed my trust. We've already filed for divorce, and you and I are no longer a couple. Why are you now hinting that you don't want the divorce? If you truly didn't want to separate, you should have followed me immediately when I returned."
I reminded him of the consequences of his and his father's decisions, particularly their investment in the two-family house without considering all the facts. I pointed out that his mother's opinion on the divorce didn't alter the reality of our situation. Her lack of experience with financial matters might have prevented her from understanding the true value of money. With a heavy sigh, I realized that entertaining complaints about his parents was no longer my concern. If we were still married, perhaps I might have listened and discussed these issues, but under the current circumstances, it was no longer appropriate for me to engage in such conversations. However, I reminded him, "You haven't submitted the divorce papers yet, have you?" He pleaded desperately, "If you do it now, we can still be a couple. Please, let's live together in that two-family house." But I had already submitted the divorce papers, so there was no turning back. "It's pointless now," I replied firmly. His face fell, a picture of bewilderment and loss, as he stood at the apartment door. While I believed he had brought this situation upon himself, I couldn't let him linger outside indefinitely. After briefly considering sending him away, I realized I had no time to waste and continued my preparations for moving. Eventually, he left, and I proceeded with my plans, notifying my workplace about the divorce, given that my boss had acted as our mediator. Feeling a need to explain the situation, I also shared the news with my coworkers during lunch break. These were the same people who had celebrated with us at our wedding. Unexpectedly, Benjamin burst into my department while I was discussing this with my colleagues, exclaiming, "It's absurd that you're talking about the divorce. I wish you hadn't mentioned it." He then proceeded to explain to everyone that he had assumed I had inherited a significant estate, which led to his impulsive suggestion of buying the two-family house. Faced with the choice between divorce and living together, I chose divorce. As a result, Benjamin found himself increasingly ostracized at work, even as my colleagues extended their sympathy towards me. The situation at his job grew so uncomfortable that he eventually resigned. During this turbulent time, a male colleague approached me. He confessed, "I've actually liked you for a long time. I hope to build a home where we can communicate as a couple and work things out together." This unexpected confession offered a glimpse of a potentially different and more understanding partnership in the future.